Hello everybody, welcome back to the Marauders Guild and another edition of Altered History Behind the Scenes. And today, I'm going to be taking you guys behind the process of creating Star Wars Altered History, The Bad Batch Accepts Order 66. Per usual on this series, I'm going to be giving you guys the insight of ideas I didn't use, the reason I made certain choices, further explanation of things, and etc., etc. And as always, this is going to be like a podcast, so not everything is going to be readily available for me. You're going to be kind of going as I go kind of deal, but that's how I like it. I like this to be almost like a conversation between us and you guys, getting insight and really setting the stage for what the next Altered History will be as well. But we'll get to that little portion at the end of this behind the scenes podcast. So let's get right down to it. Let's discuss Altered History. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is how this idea came to fruition. So, you remember initially, I was going to do The Empire Wins the Galactic Civil War. That was the original idea. But at that time, I still was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with it, because I'm going to come back to it. That is a guarantee. And like I said, I'll talk about that later. But whilst I'm still planning what I want to do with it, I wanted to still get something on the ground. So Bad Batch had just debuted on Disney Plus, and I figured, it'd be cool to see what would happen if Bad Batch did get Order 66. And it still plays on that Imperial story that I wanted to do, just in a different time period of the Empire, which also is my favorite time period of the Empire. It's the rise of the Empire. So I absolutely loved being able to tell this story and have it be Imperial-centric, be void of anything when it comes to the Force. So there was no Darth Vader, there was no Emperor Palpatine, there was no Ahsoka Tano, there was no Anakin Skywalker, no Jedi, no Sith, no Force whatsoever. I used characters like the Bad Batch, or as they are only referred to in this series as Clone Force 99. Why? Because they're Imperial. So nicknames like Bad Batch had to go when that happened. You have to be formal, I got to use Governor Tarkin. I got to use Admiral Rampart for a quick second. I had characters like Saw Gerrera, Captain Rex. I had a hint towards Wolf, things like that. And it was just really fun to do that. So let's get into it. Let's start talking about episode 1. And in episode 1, this is the episode that was also really fun to write, because I didn't really use Clone Force 99 that much. I used more so the Kaminoan side of it to see how they interpret Order 66. Because this is right after that. They're getting all the reports in, and they're finding out that the inhibitors are working properly. But more importantly, they find out the inhibitors in Clone Force 99 worked. And that was the key thing they needed. That was a key bit of information, because that is their, that's kind of like their golden goose in this deal that's coming up with the Empire. They can make experimental clones that have these enhancements, but are still loyal because of the inhibitor chips. So eventually, Tarkin does come to Camino. I don't know why I was going to say Kaminoans. He does come to Camino, as he did in the show. When he gets there, we have that same conversation of, they want the Empire to continue cloning, but the Empire is considering, enlisting actual troops. But when Clone Force 99 shows up, and not only do they show out in the training simulation, but they're still Imperial. Their inhibitors worked. And then one key thing I want to note about that as well is some people were kind of bummed that I didn't bring Echo in. And the reason I didn't do that is because if you're new to my Altered History series, or if you haven't seen the behind the scenes, what I always say when I write these is the crucial aspect is I change one particular detail, but everything that happened before that moment still happened. That's critical. So Echo would have still been captured by the CIS, would have still been gone through whatever they were going through with him, and his inhibitor would still fail when Order 66 was issued. So in that regard, he still stayed behind. He didn't get the order. He didn't accept the order. And because he was a traitor, the rest of them put him down. It's a grim idea, but that's what happened in this scenario. I didn't want to display it. I thought it would have been too much to show. And I didn't. It was not necessary in a sense of I didn't need it for the overarching story. I feel like, yeah, I could have this happen off screen and it'll still be acceptable. And for the most part, I feel like it was. But we digress. We come in episode 1. They are coming back to Camino, and it kind of ties in episode 2. So episode 2 still starts on Camino with the Bad Batch just there. And Tarkin, he wants them to hunt a Jedi. Now, as I said earlier, I didn't want this to be Force-centric, but I still needed to mention that because Order 66 did just happen. So I couldn't, at least have a mention of it. But I still had no plans in actually bringing a Jedi in, if you guys can understand that. So Tarkin says, I want you to go find Ahsoka Tano because she somehow survived Order 66 or somehow still out there. Because as we saw in the season finale, or series finale rather, of the Clone Wars, her Venator cruiser, her Jedi cruiser, basically blew up over an unknown planet, and she survived, Rex survived, every other clone died. And my thought process there was, there is no way the Empire will let, a loose end like that go. Sure, she's not technically a problem, but she's not dead. At least you don't know that for sure. So somebody somewhere is still going to be wondering where Ahsoka Tano is. And in this instance, I had Tarkin be that person. So on official Imperial records, Ahsoka Tano, she's considered dead. But to Tarkin, if I don't have a body, I don't think she's dead. So he has Bad Batch go out. So Bad Batch goes out and they begin their mission of finding the Jedi, finding a Tano. So one of the things that they do is they go to where it was last known. It was the last point of contact and that unknown planet we saw at the end of season 7. They get there, they find the cruisers, they find the helmets of the clones they buried, and it's a crazy sight. Because I also wanted that because I wanted clones to see that. Because ideally, when you see in season 7 when Vader goes back, safe to say those aren't clones. Those are actual stormtroopers who have no connection there at all. So I thought it'd be interesting to bring clones there to see other clones. And sure, this is Clone Force 99. They're physically enhanced. They don't consider themselves like the average clone, but it was still something that needed to happen for somebody who is still bred like that to see what occurred here. But when they get there, they find Ahsoka's lightsaber, so they know she has been there. But she's not dead, obviously, because her lightsabers are not next to her body. There's no sign of her body. So they know she's here. She was here, rather. But wherever she is, it's definitely not here. So Tech goes inside the cruiser. He accessed the security recordings, and he sees that Captain Rex helped Ahsoka. So that's where the next branch of the story comes out. That's who they're really hunting, is Rex. So they know now we need to find Rex if we're going to find the Jedi. So there starts this long quest to find Captain Rex, and they start digging into his history, and that's where we get to episode 3. So one of the things they find out is there is a cell of rebels on Onderon, and there is an event taking place at a droid factory on a separate planet. Now, both those events I've taken from Clone Wars, obviously. So the droid being taken was actually from the Bad Batch. That would have been the Martez sisters. I considered having them go there after the Onderon deal, but I thought, no, I don't really need them for this particular story, and I didn't really know how to tie everything up. Yeah, they do have a direct connection to Rex. We saw that in Bad Batch, but I didn't really want that, if that makes sense. I wanted there to be a bigger moment between them and Saw Gerrera. So I chose them going to Onderon. Like I said, we see that in episode 3. That's also the first episode where I bring in Admiral Rampart as a character, and I think he shows up one more time after this. But whatever the case, they go to Onderon, and when they get there, Onderon is now in control of the Empire because it was a CIS occupation. Now the droids have been shut down. The Empire's taken over. They have a quicker route in there. They meet with the commander who knows that Saw Gerrera is a problem. Why? Because Saw Gerrera has been bothering them now. So they go not straight to it, but they get the location where Saw Gerrera is camped out. They get there, and he's there with his people. They're getting ready to leave to go somewhere. And one of the key things I wanted to do with Saw in this episode was show the transformation from Saw the Rebel to Saw the Extremist. But not in such a way that he's over the edge yet, because he's not. That doesn't happen until later on as he starts really seeing what it takes to fight the Empire versus fighting the CIS. Because one of the things I always feel is different, and why you saw some people who fought in the Clone Wars get a bit more extreme when they fought the Empire, is because when you fought the CIS, you were fighting droids, and droids are programmed, and they just do, the run-of-the-mill totalitarian stuff. They might lock down a city, but they don't do, much slave labor. They don't, because they're droids. They can do it themselves. They can make droids do all the work. But the Empire is a fully functioning human machine. There is no technology that is helping to move the parts. It's all human. So they need more humans to run things. They need more humans to run their factories. They need more humans to plow their fields, to get them food. That's what they needed. So the Empire took a much more slave labor, work labor kind of stance when it came to people and dealing with them. So Saw Gerrera, of course, became extremer in that regard. But he hasn't seen that aspect yet because the Empire has just taken over. So one of the things I do to show that is when Saw is fighting the Bad Batch and the Bad Batch starts threatening his men, they shoot soldiers, he just doesn't kind of react, right? He kind of is stoic. Why? Because at this moment, he knows they're soldiers. That's the risk you take when you're a soldier, is you might die. Like, he's accepted that himself. But then, Hunter threatens the civilians. At this point, Saw Gerrera is like, no, civilians didn't sign up for this. So that's where he actually does get the reaction. And what I kind of wanted to do again is like plant that seed, because as you see later, he gets to a point where he doesn't care who dies. He doesn't care if he's the reason someone dies, because he knows people have to die to get freedom by that point. At least that's what he believes. So I wanted to show that he's not there yet, but he's on the path to becoming extremist. And this is kind of helping him set on that path. So they find out that Rex was there with Saw Gerrera at one point, but he's not there. And they're, once again, trying to find any leads, but they get lucky because they have a call from Bracca, from a scrapping guild. And they have spotted clones going there. Again, this episode took inspiration from that same episode in Bad Batch where Rex takes them to get their inhibitor chips taken out. So what I've done now is that it's kind of like Rex's go-to place to do things like that. If he has any clones that have inhibitors, he takes them to Bracca. He takes them to one of those old scrapped cruisers and gets their implant taken out. One of the things I actually did consider doing, and this is something I want to talk about, this is the first removed idea, I guess you can say, is I did consider having a young Cal Kestis show up in this episode. One of the things I was considering doing was, instead of Bad Batch being contacted via comlink when they arrived at Bracca, I was going to have them actually land and amongst a group of scrappers, and I was going to have Cal Kestis, a much younger Cal Kestis, be there, and there's going to be like a quick moment of them like, oh, they saw a kid who, among the scrappers, who looked much too young to be doing this. He looked like a fresh-faced Padawan, if Hunter was being honest, kind of deal. Like, that's what I was going to do, just as a little Easter egg, but I decided just not to do it. I think the reason I went against it is more so I didn't want to, like, it felt almost like a fan service deal, if that makes sense. Like, just doing it because I wanted to, not because it was necessary. Like, sure, he's there. He's on Bracca. We know that. But I didn't need to do it. Why? Because, like I said, we know he's on Bracca. We know he's there somewhere. He doesn't need to be in the scene for us to know that. So that's why I cut it and just went with them being raised on the comms. So they go to the ship. They have a standoff. And another Easter egg there is one of the clones that Rex has brought is Commander Wolf. Now, I don't explicitly say his name, but if you read or listened to the description of the clone, you can make out as Wolf. He has gray coloring. He has a cybernetic eye, a scar over it as well. Like, that was Wolf. He was willing to throw himself in the fire to make sure that what continues, and that's the Rex Clone Rebellion. Now, the Clone Rebellion is an idea I love. It was in the OG storylines. Remember, LucasArts Battlefront was actually a campaign mission as well. You go to Camino, and it looks like they're building that up in this particular story, which is why I decided to go with it again. Not again, but go with it here as well. So one of the things that I did was he has a base that he's established, and I'll talk about that when we get into episode 5, but I almost forgot. I want to talk about what I've been doing with Bad Batch as well. So in episode 3, I had Crosshair get injured. There was an explosion that went off. Crosshair gets hurt. He gets put on a shelf. And that's where we get into the Brock episode, because now the only 3 that go down are Hunter, Wrecker, and Tech. Now the reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to give Bad Batch a crutch. I wanted to make sure that wherever they went for that next mission, it wasn't going to go as planned. Why? Because they weren't at full strength. And yeah, they can do things without one member. But I wanted to make sure that they were there's a reason that things didn't go as perfectly as they would have liked it to, right? So they go in and Rex is there, Wolf is there, the Clone Force 99, everything breaks down. Rex and the other clones he brought escape. The Bad Batch capture Wolf, and when Rex is escaping, they're shooting at the ship. They're like, oh my god, they're going to get away. But then one of the things they see is Crosshair, who is outed by the Havoc Marauder, has fired a tracking bolt on the ship. Didn't take that much for him to do that. He's still hurt, so that's why he didn't get into direct combat. But now they at least have a lead to where Rex is going. Now that is where we get to episode 5. But here's something I cut. So episode 5 started off with the perspective from Rex's side of the camp and things of that variety, and you see all that, but I actually had it start differently. So the Rex thing was there, but it wasn't going to be the beginning. What I originally was going to do was have it start on the planet you see in the Bad Batch, Darrow, the Imperial secret base. So I was going to go there. So one of the things I was going to do was rework Project War Mantle. So we know in canon, War Mantle is the project of training TK troops to replace Imperial clone troopers. But what I was going to do now that the Empire has decided to keep clone troopers was Project War Mantle instead became an experimental weapon, an experimental cloning division. So when you go there, Tarkin is there to visit, and Admiral Rampart is there with all these clones. He has Purge troopers being trained. He has his own version of Clone Force 99 being created called Imperial Task Force 99, which if you read the comics, that name might sound familiar, but that was going to be Rampart's creation in this particular story. There's going to be all of these things. You're going to see experimental Imperial vehicles as well, all this stuff. Now, the reason I cut it is because it was just really long, and I didn't necessarily see it as necessary for the story. I did consider putting part of it as an epilogue, but at the end of the day, I just thought the way this series ended, I feel like was better. And you can kind of pick up where things are going with Clone Force 99. So let's talk about that ending, and let's talk about the battle that ensued and everything there. So I had Rex and his Clone Rebellion fight off against Bad Batch, Clone Force 99, and their own clone battalion. So that was the irony of that, was this huge battle was taking place, and the only participants were clone troopers. And I thought that's just mind-blowing to me, to have Imperial clones who are so set on being a part of the Empire. Why? Because their inhibitors worked, versus the other clones who know what the Republic is. Why? Because their inhibitors failed, or somebody freed them from those inhibitors. So this whole battle ensues, and I had a few Easter egg clones. I had Boomer, who, if you played Clone Wars Republic Heroes, he might sound familiar. I had Commander Doom, you remember from Season 6, Doom unit as well, which is one of my favorite clone units, even though we don't see them that much. They just look awesome. And a smattering of other things happened in that battle. But the big thing, of course, is the killing of Rex, them finding out where he sent the transmission. But Rex still puts the inhibitors in their mind. So it leaves like a window of maybe they still could break free. Maybe there is something about what Rex said that got to them. But until then, they're going to keep doing what they do best, and that's serve the Empire at that point. So that really is the explanation of the entire series. It was pretty good. It was pretty fun to get through, and I really, like I said, I have so much fun doing this. But it's also important that we talk about what's coming next. That's right. If you know, Altered History is a continuing thing. When I finish one series, we go on to the next one. So, in about a couple days' time from the release of this, I will be announcing the next Altered History series. And you might already have a clue of what it is. I kind of straight up said it. So, you know what? Let's scrap that, because I did say it earlier. But the official announcement of that will come on Wednesday. For anybody who didn't make it this far in the video, the next Altered History will be what if the Empire won, or rather, the Galactic Empire wins the Civil War, and that'll be the next Altered History. So, the gist of that will be, it won't be a continuation of the old series. I've explained this a lot. I wrote that series years ago. I have lost all my notes on that series, so I don't know where I was going to take it. But the new series will still be roughly the same thing. I'm just going to do things differently, where I have a clear direction of where things are going and that variety. So it will still be around Inferno Squad and Iden Versio and all her Del Mico. You know, it will still be about them. It will still be after Endor. So the gist of it will still be the same. There'll be some details that are different, because honestly, some of those ideas I was like, I don't know what I did, why I did that. I don't know why I did that. So that's the quick answer to what the next Altered History is. But again, the official announcement will come on Wednesday. I'm going to try to do something really cool to announce it, so be on the lookout for that as well. And if you had any questions furthermore about this particular series of The Bad Batch Accepts Order 66, feel free to put them down in the comment section below, and I will definitely respond to the best of my ability. But if you enjoyed this video today, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already, and ring that bell as well, because it's the best way to know when any new video is uploaded to the channel. And as well, if you are interested in anything else besides Star Wars that I am doing, be sure to head over to my sister channel, that is MG Plus, where I'll be doing Marvel's Avengers content in the very near future, so keep an eye out for that as well. Well, with that all being said, until the next time, may the force of others be with you.